Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates. Before TV cameras came to Dallas, Sue Martin was already famous in the car world. She had a small shop called ASM Auto Upholstery. She built her career by being really good at her job and making customers happy. Sue worked on car seats and interiors. She spent many years getting better and better at her work. She fixed everything from old muscle cars to fancy new cars. People didn't know about her because of TV or famous people. They knew her because her work was so perfect that even picky car owners couldn't find anything wrong. ASM wasn't a huge place with lots of workers. It was a small, smart shop where Sue did almost everything herself. She knew that a car's inside wasn't just where you sit. It was the part you touch, feel, and spend time in every day. Every line had to be straight, every stitch had to be perfect, and every piece had to match the car's style. She could fix old, torn, sun-damaged seats to look brand new. Or she could make a completely new interior that made the car special and one of a kind. In Dallas car groups, if you asked where to get the best seat work, everyone said Sue's name. She wasn't trying to be famous. Her shop already had plenty of work from loyal customers. But Sue's personality was as special as her work. She was honest, funny, and didn't sugarcoat what she thought. She would tell customers exactly what their car needed, and just as important, what it didn't need. This mix of skill, honesty, and personality made her stand out long before Fast and Loud came along. It was this good name that she had built over years that would soon bring a phone call from a man named Richard Rawlings. This would change her whole career and introduce her to people all across America. For years, Sue Martin kept working quietly, running ASM Auto Upholstery the same way she always had. Steady work, steady customers, no drama. But in the early 2000s and 2010s, a phone call came to her shop that would change everything. On the other end was Richard Rawlings, the fast-talking, bigger-than-life owner of Gas Monkey Garage. At that time, Fast and Loud was just starting to get popular on Discovery Channel. Richard had a problem. His team could take apart and rebuild a car completely. But when it came to really good upholstery work, especially when they needed it done fast, they needed an expert. Richard had heard about Sue through the Dallas car scene. Everyone told him the same thing. If you want it done right and done fast, go see Sue. He came to ASM one afternoon with car seats that needed a lot of help. It wasn't a fancy job, just something that had to be done. But Sue took it on right away. Richard got his seats back super fast, and the quality amazed him. What was supposed to be a one-time job quickly became a regular thing. Whenever Gas Monkey needed upholstery work, whether for a muscle car going to auction or a high-profile celebrity build, Sue got the call. Soon, the TV producers started to notice that her conversations with Richard weren't just good for business. They were fun to watch. She didn't act all impressed by him like others in the car business might. In fact, she had no problem making sarcastic jokes at him if he was being too confident, late, or asking for impossible things. That back and forth was perfect for TV. Soon, she wasn't just the lady who did the seats. She was a regular on-screen person, and viewers loved her from the first few times they saw her. She could definitely hold her own in the Gas Monkey world. When Sue Martin first showed up on Fast and Loud, she didn't look or act like a typical reality TV person. She wasn't there to pretend to be someone else. She was just being herself. Standing in her shop, surrounded by rolls of leather, big sewing machines, and half-finished projects, she treated the camera crew like they weren't even there. What people noticed right away was her honest way of talking and quick sense of humor. Richard Rawlings might come into ASM with cameras rolling, throwing around deadlines, and acting like the job was already sold. Sue, without missing a beat, would raise an eyebrow and shoot back with something like, "You want it when? What's in it for me?" That push and pull worked perfectly on TV because it wasn't fake. It was how they actually worked together. Her sharp wit wasn't mean. It came from mutual respect. Richard knew Sue was the best at what she did, and Sue knew Richard valued her work enough to keep coming back. But she also knew the game. If she didn't push back, deadlines would get tighter and expectations would get higher. For fans, Sue became a breath of fresh air. while other parts of the show focused on fast builds, auctions, or drama inside Gas Monkey Garage. Sue's scenes were different. They were funny, real, and showed off a skill that often gets overlooked in the car world. It didn't take long before viewers were asking for more Sue in future episodes. To people who don't know much about cars, upholstery might seem like something you do at the end, something you handle last. But Sue Martin knew better. A perfect paint job or rebuilt engine could wow a crowd. But if the interior looked tired, didn't match, or looked cheap, the whole build suffered. In her shop, Sue treated every interior as both fixing something old and making something new. First came taking everything apart, stripping out the old material, foam, and padding. Often she found decades of wear, rust, or damage hidden underneath. Then came rebuilding, cutting new foam, stretching leather or vinyl to perfection, and sewing with precision that only comes from years at the sewing table. Her work on Fast and Loud showed this art to people all across America. Viewers watched her turn cracked, sun-faded bench seats into showroom-ready pieces or design custom interiors that matched the theme of a build perfectly. She could copy a factory look down to the tiniest stitch or create something completely unique if the project called for it. What made Sue different was her speed without giving up quality. Richard and the Gas Monkey crew were known for rushing builds to meet auction deadlines. Yet Sue delivered perfect results on timelines most upholsterers would call impossible. That mix of great work and hustle made her essential, not just to Gas Monkey, but to the show's storytelling itself. The longer Sue Martin appeared on Fast and Loud, the more her scenes became a highlight for viewers. It wasn't just that she delivered perfect work. It was the way she talked with the Gas Monkey crew, especially Richard Rawlings and Aaron Kaufman. Her joking had a rhythm to it. Richard would swagger in with exaggerated urgency. Sue would pretend to be unimpressed, and Aaron would often play the quiet troublemaker, smirking in the background as the two fought with words. It was real chemistry because it wasn't made up. Sue wasn't trying to be a TV personality. She didn't change her voice or behavior when the cameras were on. In fact, her slight annoyance at the constant filming probably made her even more relatable to the audience. She'd roll her eyes when Richard threw out another last-minute request, then turn right around and deliver results so clean they looked effortless. What made it special was that the show never tried to change Sue for TV. They didn't dress her up, write her lines, or push her into drama that wasn't there. She was simply herself, confident in her craft, and unafraid to challenge the biggest personality on the show. That realness connected with people. Fans didn't just watch Sue for the upholstery work. They watched to see her put Richard in his place and do it with a smile. By the middle seasons of her appearances, viewers were commenting online that some episodes felt incomplete without a trip to ASM Upholstery. She had gone from being a side character to an essential part of the Fast and Loud experience, proving that skill and personality could be just as interesting as the builds themselves. Television has a way of changing small businesses overnight, and Sue Martin experienced it firsthand. Before Fast and Loud, ASM Upholstery was already doing great as a local Dallas business. She had steady customers, a good reputation, and enough work to keep the shop busy all year. But after her first few episodes aired, everything changed. The phone started ringing more. Then it didn't stop. Car lovers from across the country wanted the Sue treatment for their interiors. Some shipped entire cars to Dallas just so she could work on them. Others mailed seat covers, door panels, or custom fabric with handwritten notes saying they were fans of her on the show. This surge in business brought good things and challenges. Suddenly, Sue was juggling high-profile TV projects with a flood of new customers. She had to handle longer waiting lists, manage expectations, and keep quality high despite all the new demand. And all of this while balancing the unpredictable filming schedule of Fast and Loud, which could mean dropping everything for a rush job. Money-wise, the TV exposure was a huge win. But Sue never let fame push her away from the work she loved most, great craftsmanship. She didn't hire other people to do her upholstery work to keep up with demand. She didn't expand her shop into something she wouldn't recognize. Instead, she stayed hands-on, making sure that every stitch still had her personal touch. That decision kept her reputation strong long after the initial TV spotlight faded. For all the laughs and friendship that fans saw on TV, Sue's time on Fast and Loud wasn't without stress. Working under a camera crew's watchful eye was one thing. Working under Gas Monkey's famously tight deadlines was another. Richard's shop succeeded on quick turnarounds, buying a car, rebuilding it, and selling it in record time. Upholstery work, however, doesn't always bend to those limits. Sue often found herself in the middle of a time crunch with producers wanting footage, the Gas Monkey crew pushing for early completion, and her own standards refusing to let a job leave the shop unless it was perfect. That push-pull could be exhausting. There were days when she'd be sewing late into the night, then back in the shop early the next morning to film final reveal shots. On top of that, the TV aspect introduced new challenges. Lighting crews would rearrange her workspace for shots, slowing her down. Producers sometimes asked her to redo a scene she'd already worked through just for the camera. And while she handled it with grace, those added layers of disruption could make already stressful deadlines even tighter. Yet Sue's strength shone through. She adapted without compromising her work, delivering interiors that met her exact standards while keeping the show's momentum alive. That ability to stay calm, deliver quality, and still joke with Richard was exactly why she became one of the most memorable personalities in Fast and Loud history. Fans couldn't understand it. By her third or fourth season of appearances, Sue Martin was a real star of Fast and Loud. She had the skills, the on-screen charm, and a fan base that loved her. So why didn't she just become a permanent cast member at Gas Monkey Garage? The truth was Sue never wanted to give up her independence. ASM Upholstery wasn't just her business. It was her identity. Joining Gas Monkey full-time would mean turning over her schedule, her workload, and even her creative control to someone else's timeline. That wasn't how she worked. She succeeded by choosing her own projects, setting her own pace, and running her shop the way she saw fit. There were also practical things to think about. A full-time TV role might have meant closing her doors to her regular customers, many of whom had been with her for decades. Sue valued those relationships. She wasn't interested in letting fame push aside the people who had helped her build her reputation long before cameras showed up. Of course, the production team tried to convince her. Richard himself brought up the idea more than once, but every time Sue politely said no. She preferred to remain the go-to specialist rather than a full-time crew member. That decision allowed her to have the best of both worlds, occasional TV appearances that boosted her profile, and a steady business that kept her grounded. It's part of what made her role so special. She wasn't tied down by network contracts or storylines. She came in, did her job to perfection, delivered unforgettable TV moments, and went back to her world on her own terms. When Fast and Loud ended, fans worried Sue might fade from the public eye. But for her, life after the show was just as busy, only without the constant hum of cameras. ASM Upholstery continued to do great, and in many ways, the national exposure from the show gave her shop a permanent boost. She began taking on more specialized projects, sometimes for collectors who had seen her work on TV and were willing to wait months for a custom interior. Some of these jobs were even more ambitious than what she'd done for Gas Monkey. Full vintage restorations, exotic custom work, and even the occasional show card destined for competition. Sue also started working with other builders outside of the Fast and Loud world. Without the exclusivity of a TV contract, she had the freedom to choose which projects to accept and which to turn down. This meant she could focus on builds that genuinely excited her instead of those dictated by production deadlines. Her loyal fan base didn't disappear either. People still stopped by the shop for autographs or to snap a photo with a Queen of Upholstery.